world's busiest and the most critical oil routes, the Strait of Hormuz, is at the center of global attention. Following US strikes on Iran's 3 nuclear sites, Iran's parliament has authorized the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz, although the final decision rests with the Supreme National Security Council. The decision has already deepened fears for the global energy trade. But why this narrow waterway matters and what the implication of a blockage would be? Let's find out in this DNA Explained. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow channel between Iran and Oman that connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. It's small, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest, but it carries almost 1/5 of the world's total supply. Every major Gulf oil producer, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE, uses this route to export energy to the world. According to a senior research analyst of refining and modeling, every day nearly 40% of the world's crude oil and natural gas passes through this route.
Price will rise with geopolitical tensions. Fundamentally, a lot of players actually said the market was bearish, and I think if there was no such spark of US involvement in the Iran attacks, the flat price would have likely been quite low in the 60s, even the low 70s maybe. But with this attack, everything how it changed. It really did indicate that US is making a statement. We are supporting Israel in this these hostilities.
Iran's lawmakers are reacting strongly after recent attack on its nuclear sites, widely believed to be carried out by the US and Israel. In response, Iran is signaling that closing the Strait of Hormuz is now a military option if its national interests are seriously threatened. This warning alone has already shaken global oil and energy markets. Iran could attempt to block the strait by laying sea mines. These mines are difficult to clear and highly feared by navies. To deploy them quickly, Iran would rely on its Kilo-class and Ghadir-class submarines. This mining could be backed by coastal anti-ship missiles batteries, fast patrol boat, and drones and air support. However, any such action risks immediate retaliation from the US, Israel, and the Gulf allies, as mine clearing is dangerous but achievable with US naval assets. A full closure would be seen as an act of war, inviting a large-scale military response.
So ministers are very much focused on the diplomatic solution and also the concerns of retaliation and this war escalating are huge. Especially closing of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran is something that it would be extremely dangerous and not good for anybody.
If Iran actually moves to block or disrupt this route, the impact on the world economy could be massive. Global oil prices may skyrocket. Oil prices could shoot past $100 per barrel, raising energy cost globally. Even partial blockage could send oil prices soaring past $120 to $150 per barrel, depending on the length of the disruption. Brent crude has already surged above $90 in anticipation, with the WTI not far behind. Higher shipping costs. Beyond oil, the strait is a vital route for the container ships and cargo vessels. Its closure would increase shipping costs, delay shipments, marine insurance premiums, and reroute vessels through longer, more expensive paths, affecting the trade and supply chains. Energy crisis in Asia and Europe. Countries like India, China, Japan, and several other energy-dependent countries in Europe and Asia, which rely heavily on Gulf energy imports, would face fresh inflation pressure, energy shortages, and economic turbulence, hurting industries and consumers alike. Europe, already reeling after the fallout of the Ukraine war, may find itself in deeper crisis if Qatari LNG shipments are blocked. Stock markets turmoil and recession fears. Central banks may be forced to intervene, and developing economics with heavy energy import bills could face new debt challenges. Risk of wider war. The US, UK and France maintain strong naval presence in the Gulf. A closure would likely trigger military escort missions or even direct intervention to reopen the waterway, further inflaming regional tensions.
Insofar as the global situation today is concerned, the escalation of tensions in the Middle East was not entirely unexpected. In fact, we had foreshadowed this escalation, and the government under the Honorable Prime Minister has been consistently and periodically reviewing the situation, including the possibility of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz.
India is particularly exposed to this risk. The home country, which imports over 60% of its crude oil from the Gulf, any disruption could lead to higher fuel prices, domestically impacting inflation and household spendings. Costlier transportation and reroute crude LNG would surge insurance costs. Fresh inflationary pressures on the Indian economy. Delay imports from the major suppliers like Qatar, Iraq and UAE disrupt bilateral trade with the Middle East partners, especially in sectors like chemicals, fertilizers and heavy industry.
If Iran closes the Straits of Hormuz, definitely India suffers. About 20% of the world's crude oil and 25% of the world's natural gas flows through these. Qatar's gas, which we buy, almost all flows through this, right? Kuwaiti oil, 70% of Saudi oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz. If that happens, which is expected, India will suffer because oil prices will go up, inflation will rise, and there is an estimate that for every $10 increase in the price of crude oil, India's GDP will suffer by 0.5%. So right now oil is around 75, 80, it may jump to 90, 100, 110. So if it jumps by around $20, $30, it means about 1% to 1.5% of India's GDP growth will be shaved off.
This prolonged disruption would pressure the Indian economy and force urgent diplomatic maneuvering. But some experts believe that India's strategic oil reserves could cushion the blow temporarily.
We had diversified the sources of supply, and out of the 5.5 million barrels of crude oil that India consumes daily, about 1.5 and 2 million only come through the Straits of Hormuz. We import roughly 4 million barrels through other routes, and our companies, the oil marketing companies, have enough stocks. Most of them have stocks up to 3 weeks. One of them has in fact 25 days stocks. And we are also confident that we can increase the supply of crude through other routes should the situation so warrant. We are in touch with all possible actors in this, the supply routes, etc. And I believe that there is no cause for any alarm on this score.
A large part of Iran's own economy depends on the oil and gas exports that pass through the same strait. According to 2023 estimates, over 17 million barrels of oil pass through the strait each day. Iran itself relies on it for crude and LNG shipments. While alternate pipelines exist, they can only divert around 2.6 million barrels per day, barely a fraction of the daily flow through Hormuz. A full closure would also mean choking off its own revenue, something Tehran can't afford for long. This makes a complete and permanent blockage unlikely, but short-term disruptions cannot be ruled out. Moreover, a blockage would likely provoke military retaliations from the US and its allies.
After having sustained the damage that they have, any attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz right now will be met, I think, with probably unbelievable force from the United States. And you have to remember, now that this has started, it's not that difficult to imagine the French or the Brits coming in to clear the lanes, right? Not necessarily to join the war, so to speak, but to clear the lanes so that the traffic can continue. So I see the Iranians as being absolutely suicidal if they go down this route. And I do get a sense that we could be at a pivotal moment here. It doesn't mean that Iran won't try to attack, but I think asymmetrically is much more likely than through conventional means.
Even countries like China, which continue to buy Iranian oil, may oppose a move, leaving Iran further isolated.